9. George W. Bush. In 2005, President George W. Bush visited Tbilisi, Georgia for a public speech attended by thousands. During the event, a man in the crowd threw a live Soviet-made hand grenade toward the stage. For a few terrifying moments, no one realized what had happened. Fortunately, the grenade failed to detonate. Investigators later discovered that a cloth wrapped around it prevented the firing mechanism from functioning properly. Had it exploded, the blast could have killed or severely injured multiple people, including both presidents. The attacker was later identified and arrested after a major manhunt. 8. Theodore Roosevelt. In 1912, former President Theodore Roosevelt was campaigning for another term. Just before he started the speech, a gunman approached him and fired a revolver at close range. The bullet struck Roosevelt in the chest. What saved him was a remarkable combination of luck and preparation. In his pocket was a thick folded speech manuscript and a metal eyeglass case. Together, they slowed the bullet enough to prevent it from reaching his lungs. Roosevelt quickly determined he wasn't coughing blood, meaning his lung was likely intact. Instead of going to the hospital, he insisted on giving his speech. For nearly an hour and a half, he addressed the crowd with a bullet still lodged inside him. Doctors later decided it was safer to leave the bullet where it was, and Roosevelt carried it for the rest of his life. 7. Harry Truman. While the White House was undergoing renovations, President Harry Truman lived across the street in Blair House. On November 1, 1950, two Puerto Rican nationalists launched a bold attack. Their goal was to kill Truman and draw attention to Puerto Rico's independence movement. The attackers opened fire on guards outside the residence and attempted to force their way inside. A fierce gun battle erupted. More than 24 shots were exchanged in a matter of minutes. One White House police officer was killed, while one attacker was fatally wounded and the other captured. Truman was upstairs taking a nap when the shooting began. At one point, he even looked out a window, putting himself in potential danger. The attackers never reached him, but the event remains one of the closest assaults on a sitting president's residence. 6. Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford holds the unusual distinction of surviving two separate assassination attempts in less than 3 weeks. The first occurred in Sacramento, California. Ford was walking from the Senator Hotel across L Street toward the Capitol, greeting people along a pathway in Capitol Park, when Lynette Fromm stepped forward and pointed a Colt .45 pistol at him from only a few feet away. She tried to fire a shot while Secret Service agent Larry Buendorf immediately grabbed the weapon at the same time. The gun had ammunition in the magazine, but no round was chambered, so no shot went off. Lynette, who fired the gun, was a follower of cult leader Charles Manson, who they viewed as their god. Just 17 days later, Ford was walking through a crowd in San Francisco. That's when another woman, Sarah Jane Moore, pulled out a revolver and fired. A nearby bystander reacted instantly and grabbed Moore's arm as she pulled the trigger. The bullet missed Ford by only a few feet. Two different attackers and two strokes of extraordinary luck. 5. Ronald Reagan. On March 30, 1981, Ronald Reagan exited a Washington hotel after giving a speech. A gunman named John Hinckley Jr. fired 6 shots in less than 2 seconds. One bullet struck Press Secretary James Brady, another hit a police officer, and another wounded a Secret Service agent. A final bullet ricocheted off Reagan's limousine and entered his chest. Initially, Reagan thought he had only broken a rib, but once inside the White House, he began coughing blood. Doctors quickly realized the situation was far more serious. The bullet had narrowly missed his heart and lodged near his lung. Reagan lost a significant amount of blood, and doctors later stated that a delay in treatment could have been fatal. He went through medical treatment and luckily survived. 4. Bill Clinton. In September 1994, a man named Frank Eugene Corder stole a small Cessna 150 from an airport in Maryland and took off alone in the middle of the night. He flew toward Washington, D.C. at low altitude, avoiding much of the attention that larger aircraft would attract. As the plane approached the White House, security personnel had only moments to react. The aircraft crashed onto the South Lawn after narrowly missing parts of the presidential residence. Security officials initially feared the crash could be part of a larger attack or a coordinated threat. President Bill Clinton happened to be away from the White House at the time. Although the pilot died in the crash, the incident exposed major vulnerabilities in White House security and raised serious concerns about how easily a determined attacker could approach the presidential residence from the air. Had Clinton been outside or the plane struck a different location, the consequences could have been far worse. 3. Andrew Jackson. As Jackson was leaving the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C., an unemployed house painter named Richard Lawrence stepped forward, pulled out a pistol, and fired at him from just a few feet away. Nothing happened. Lawrence immediately pulled out a second pistol and fired again. By miracle, that gun also jammed. Historians estimate the odds of both weapons failing were incredibly small. Jackson, who was already in his late 60s and known for his fiery temper, didn't run. Instead, he charged at Lawrence and began striking him with his cane. Bystanders eventually restrained the attacker. Had either pistol worked properly, Jackson almost certainly would have been killed on the spot. 2. Donald Trump. On July 13, 2024, Donald Trump was speaking at a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, when gunfire suddenly erupted. A gunman positioned on a nearby rooftop opened fire with an AR-15 toward the stage. One bullet grazed Trump's ear. Video footage showed him reaching toward the injury moments before Secret Service agents rushed him to the ground and evacuated him. Sadly, one of the bullets struck an innocent rally attendee in the crowd, and he was killed. A few others were injured before the shooter was eventually shot and killed by law enforcement. Investigators later determined that the bullet passed extremely close to Trump's head. It was only about half a centimeter away from entering his head. The event shocked the nation and immediately became one of the most significant assassination attempts in modern history. 1. Richard Nixon. 44-year-old Samuel Bike, a struggling tire salesman from Philadelphia, had become obsessed with the belief that the U.S. government was corrupt and that Nixon was personally responsible for many of the country's problems. Bike had repeatedly sent bizarre recorded messages to public officials, journalists, and celebrities, complaining about politics and social injustice. Over time, his anger escalated into a deadly plan. On the morning of February 22, 1974, Bike drove to Baltimore Washington International Airport with the intention of hijacking a commercial airliner and crashing it directly into the White House while Nixon was inside. To get access to the plane, he first shot and killed an airport police officer and stole his weapon. He then forced his way onto Delta Airlines Flight 523, a DC-9 preparing to depart for Atlanta with passengers already seated on board. Once on the aircraft, Bick shot both pilots before they could react. Fortunately, the plane's wheel blocks were still in place, preventing the aircraft from moving. Desperate to get airborne, Bick ordered the injured co-pilot to begin the takeoff procedure, but the co-pilot was unable to comply because of his wounds. Meanwhile, airport police quickly surrounded the aircraft. A tense gunfight followed, with officers firing through the cockpit windows. As the situation became hopeless and police closed in, Bick shot himself before he could carry out his attack. The entire incident lasted only minutes, but it foreshadowed a type of terrorist attack that would become tragically familiar decades later.